My name's Justin Chalfant. I'm the engineering lead at PatchMyPC. A little background about us if you don't know what we do. We create a third-party software update catalog that can integrate into Sccm. So basically what you're getting with our solution is the ability to publish third-party updates into Config Manager and then deploy them just like you would deploy any other Microsoft update, for example. So what I'm going to be showing you today is just kind of our solution, what it would look like from a technical perspective to get it set up, how we could publish updates, and then take any Q&A throughout the session that you guys just feel free to stop me if you guys have any questions throughout the session as I'm kind of going through things. So with that said, I was just planning on getting started, so I don't have any PowerPoint or anything like that. It's going to be purely kind of, this is how we set this up, this is what it looks like to get those updates into SCCM and how we would deploy those. So how many of you guys are running 1806? Any hands going up in there, Scott?
Yeah, I think we have 3 or 4, looks like.
Okay, cool. Has anyone noticed the new third-party software update catalog feature in the software updates node?
I have.
All right, cool. I know you're running it, I think now, Scott. So that's cool. But what I'm going to show you is kind of some of the cool new features that came out there, and I'm also going to kind of cover our publishing service, as well as the publishing feature available in 1806. And kind of what some of the differences between how we can get those updates published. But I think the big thing here is that with the 1806 release, you don't really need SCUP anymore, which is quite nice because it was a pretty manual process to get updates using SCUP to publish in your site. So it's pretty cool having this automated solution, and we fully support Config Manager as well as we also have our own publishing service that I'll go over here. So kind of the first thing that we have to do is configure how you want your updates to get into your site. So if you're using our publishing tool, I'll show you what that setup looks like. So the first thing that we have going on here is our catalog subscription. So what this is essentially doing is whenever we download or run a schedule to publish new updates, it's going to go download the latest metadata based on this catalog subscription URL. So the way our publishing works, we generally do, I would say, about 3 to 4 catalog updates a week for the third-party updates in our catalog. So like I mentioned, we have about 265 updates or so, which translates to about 151 unique products. So if you're interested in the supported products number, you can just go to our supported products page. And if you break down into each product, we'll also give you information, for example, like do we support 32 and 64-bit? For things like Adobe Reader, obviously they have different tracks, so of course we support kind of all the different tracks and versions of that. So you can easily drill down into each product to get more information about kind of the versions that we would support there. So kind of looking at the releases, if we just kind of look over here at our RSS feed, so we can kind of see what's going on here. We had a release today, we had one 2 days ago, and then it usually goes probably about 3 times a week, like I mentioned. So for today's release, I'll show you what that looks like. So whenever we release an update to our catalog, and then if you have a product that would be enabled for that, it would automatically publish that new version. So for example, we can see that today we released about 13 different updates for the products that we support on our catalog. Within our release, so you can either subscribe to this RSS feed, or if you want to get an email notification whenever we release a catalog update, you could get notified via email over here as well. But we'll give you information about all the updates for that day. So for example, if we come here and look at VMware Workstation, we could easily jump over to the release notes. We'll also give you information about any security vulnerabilities and CVIDs associated with any of those releases. So that's kind of what we're looking at here. So this is going to contain all that metadata about updates that we support within our catalog that we can publish. The next thing we need to do is determine what certificate that you want to use to publish updates. So whenever we're publishing updates to SCCM and then they sync over to Config Manager, whenever we publish updates to Wsus and they sync over, they do need to be code signed for trust purposes. So we could either generate a self-signed certificate. This is the same option that you would have in SCUP if you were using SCUP today, or what you could do is import a PFX file if you have a code signing cert either from an internal certificate authority or even a third party. For this demo, we're just going to generate the self-signed one for our updates. Next thing we have going on is we would select what products you want to enable for publishing within your hierarchy. So these are going to be all the products that were kind of listed out over on that website. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and choose Adobe, and I'm going to switch this over to use metadata only. So we have two different publication types that we can use. The metadata only won't actually go out and download all the content for all these updates, but it would publish the metadata about them so you could see how many of your clients actually need that update. So for Adobe, I'll use metadata for that one. Then we also have a machine over here with Java. So I'll search over to Java, and we're going to enable Java 8. This 32-bit version. For updates that we know that can have some issues for running processes and things like that, we do actually give you some options where you could either kill the Java process before the update, or if that's running in the background, we could skip the update and then it would attempt during the next software update scan cycle. For this demo, I'll go ahead and choose that kill option. I think we also have CCleaner on one of these machines that we're going to be demoing, so I'll go ahead and enable that option as well. One thing that we do want to have in a future update is an option to connect into the Config Manager database and basically look at the hardware inventory scans for add and remove programs. And then we could kind of, even before you start publishing updates, we're hoping that we can kind of show you, hey, you have this many instances of this product out there, so you can get a good idea of kind of what's out there even before you start publishing, so it can give you a better determination on what you might want to enable here. So that's something we're hoping to get out soon. The next option is going to be the scheduling. So this is how often the publishing service is going to go download our catalog and then automatically publish any new updates that we've released that match the products that you have enabled within that products tab. So by default, it's every night at 7 p.m. That probably works well. If you weren't interested in staying up to date and having it always publish the latest version right as we release it, you could certainly go to a weekly or even a monthly cadence. Maybe you only want to patch or publish new updates on Patch Tuesday. You could certainly choose that option as well. Under the notifications, we have an option here. So actually, sorry about that. Before we skip out of that tab, let me go ahead and start running the schedule now, just so we can get that Java update publishing in the background as we're kind of going through the rest of the tabs here. So proxy, nothing too special about that, but we do have email settings. So if you want to get an email notification whenever a new update is published to your site that you have enabled, we can just enable some SMTP settings, and then you would get an email whenever new updates are published to your site. In the advanced tab, not too much here. One thing that could be helpful in some scenarios, if you want to keep the previous version of an update active, you do have the ability to delay expiring that update for up to 30 days. So take Google Chrome, for example. They come out quite frequently, usually about 1 to 2 a week. So if you have a long testing cycle, maybe you have to go through a few different collections and it could take a couple weeks. What the delay option will allow you to do is keep that previous version still active for up to 30 days before it gets expired. So you can still have that previous version with all its fixes deployed while the new one is in testing cycle. So that can be pretty helpful. We do have a standalone Wsus mode. So if you're not using Config Manager and you want to make the updates appear within Sccm, or I'm sorry, within the Wsus console, we do have an option for that. And then we have a wizard that will run you through our dashboard installer for our SSRS reports. So on the back end, to kind of show you what's going on in the background, the publishing service is just going to automatically reach out, download the catalog, and then it's going to evaluate what products you have enabled, and then automatically publish any of those meeting your criteria. So for example, we can see all these Adobe updates are publishing with metadata only, so they went really quick because it's not downloading any content. But here we can see we got CCleaner. We're always going to do a hash check to make sure that the actual installer that we download from the vendor matches the same file that we created the update with initially. Then we can see we went ahead and got Java, and then we published the remaining Adobe updates that we had for metadata. So it looks like at this point we're pretty much good to go. You wouldn't really have to do too much in the publishing service. It would just handle all the publishing automatically. The only time you might have to come into our settings tool would be if we release a new product and you want to go enable it. For example, a few days, I think it was Monday, we released 18 new products. So if you had a scenario like that, you could just come back into the tool and enable any of those new products that you'd want to publish. So that looks good. If we jump over to our email, this is just kind of what the report would look like if you had those SMTP reports enabled. So we're going to show you what updates were published with full content. So we had the CCleaner and Java update, and then we're going to show you what third-party updates were published with metadata only. So that's going to be all those Adobe updates that we've added. We do have a new product, Adobe Digital Edition, I believe, something like that, that will be coming out in tomorrow's catalog update. So that looks good. As far as the email notifications, if you wanted to get information about release notes and CVIDs, this is kind of what that email would look like. So same type of data that we saw in that RSS feed. So for example, for this release, we had Google Chrome. It had a lot of security vulnerabilities that we listed out within that email as well. So that looks good. So now that the service is kind of up and running, any new updates would just automatically go. On the config manager side, the way it's going to work is, load that up. Any questions up to this point while we're waiting for this?
How many products do you have for your catalog as of today?
Good question. Actually, I think Scott's the only one in the meeting. So if you come to our website and go to the SCUP catalog and then supported products, this is kind of where we list all of that out. So we currently support about 265 different updates. It looks like it's 272 now. So an update would include, so if we look at 7-zip, for example, a update number would include the 32 and 64-bit of 7-zip. When we're looking at the unique products, that's going to be 151. So that's going to be specific products. So 7-zip would count as one product. Adobe Acrobat would be one. Adobe Reader would be one. So we have 150 different products that we would support as far as getting those patches out. So from the SCCM side of things, the way that these updates are going to sync over, it's really not going to be any different. So I'm going to go ahead and just do a manual software update point sync. And what that's going to do, that's going to tell your config manager software update point to go ahead and sync its software updates from Wsus. Just like how Wsus would synchronize with Microsoft updates to pull down all the latest Microsoft updates, and then that would sync into config manager. When we do our software update point, that's going to be when the sync starts pulling in all these third-party updates that we auto-publish to Wsus, and then they would be available within SCCM. So this could essentially be a fully automated solution if you wanted, where you would enable the products that you want to patch. Our service would automatically publish any new versions of those, and then your software update point would automatically bring them into Config Manager. Now, of course, once they get over to Config Manager, they're really going to be no different. So you could even automate the deployment if you're using ADRs. If you're using search criteria, manually creating your update groups, that would, of course, work just the same as you're doing it today. So here we can see all those updates that kind of came through. So we have all the Adobe stuff. We can see that it's got the metadata only, that's the blue icon, meaning that we couldn't actually deploy this yet because we didn't download the content, but you're still going to get the scan data back from our clients. And then we have our two updates for CCleaner and Java that we enabled with full content, so you can see you've got that normal green icon where it could be deployed. Now within our lab, we're using an ADR, so if we come in here and look at our software update ADR criteria, we're basically just saying, hey, show me any software update from Patch My PC and exclude any update that contains migration in the title. So we do have a couple migration updates. So we have an update for migrating Java 6 and Java 7 runtime to Java 8. So that could be like a major migration pulling off those old versions. And then we have a migration update for Firefox to Firefox ESR. So we're just excluding those from this ADR from picking them up. So we run a quick preview. That's going to give us those two updates that we published with full content. So what happened on the back end is when this ADR ran, and if we look at the deployment for the ADR, we can see that we're automatically deploying this to all desktop and server clients. Under the deployment experience, you're going to still have all the same options. So you can choose whether or not you want to show notifications for your users to get prompted or allow them to see the software updates in Software Center. You can choose when your deadline happens. Do you want to allow the updates to install outside of a maintenance window? So we could still abide by any maintenance windows that you're using on your collections. Same thing with the restart behavior. So if an update needs a restart, you could determine whether you want to suppress that or whether you want to have it restart, and then it would restart based on your client settings for the restart behavior. As far as the download goes, when the updates get downloaded, they're going to go into a software update package or a deployment package. That's going to go out to all your existing distribution points, so you don't have to worry about any additional server infrastructure. All the content and scanning is going to be handled directly through your SCCM hierarchy, so you don't need any additional client agents. You don't need to enable software inventory for scanning files. Everything's going to be done through the native software updates feature of Config Manager. So that looks good. So if we jump over to our client, or I'm sorry, actually let me show you some new features in 1806. So we need to make sure our clients trust our certificate. So there's a new feature in 1806, and if you're not on 1806 yet, it's super easy to also enable these features and deploy the certificate using a group policy. So what we're going to do, we're going to tell Config Manager to enable the third-party updates feature, and we're going to tell Config Manager to automatically deploy the certificate to our clients. So in order for it to actually read and start deploying that certificate, we do have to do one software update point sync, and then it's going to go pull out the certificate that we generated in our publishing tool and then automatically get that deployed to our clients so they trust the updates that we're publishing. There's also a group policy setting that we needed to enable to allow the clients to trust third-party updates that we publish to Wsus. So this is a new setting in 1806, actually this was 1802 this was available as well. But there's a new setting here called Enable Third-Party Software Updates. This is going to enable the local group policy on the client, so you don't even have to worry about, if you're running 1806, you don't have to worry about deploying your certificate or deploying the third-party allow updates from allow third-party updates. That could all be handled natively through Config Manager. So that's pretty cool. But like I said, if you're not there yet, it's a really simple group policy to enable. So if we jump over to our client, what we'll do, we'll go ahead and initiate a machine policy so we can see if we can get those scans and policies for our deployment starting to show up on our device. So that's looking pretty good so far. So we got the new policy. If we look here, we can now see that if we do a scan cycle just to get that checking in faster, we can now see that it's evaluating that deployment that we created through our ADR. And since we are showing notifications, we're going to get the notification about new software updates being available. So here's that notification here. Now, as far as the policy goes, I'll show you what that would look like if you were using group policy. So if we look at our local group policy, this is the setting that the Config Manager is automatically going to set for us. It's going to just set the local group policy to enable the third-party updates. So under the Windows Components and then Windows Update feature, there's going to be a setting in here to allow signed updates from Intranet update location. So that's going to be allowing our client to install any third-party updates we publish. So you can see that that setting is enabled on our local policy because we enabled that client setting for Config Manager auto-enable it. So if you were using group policy, you could just enable this one setting in the template. Now if we look at our certificates, what we'll notice is the certificate is also automatically deployed because we enabled Config Manager to also manage our certificates. So we're running the 1807 preview. I did notice to speed this up in 1807, what we can do is just restart the agent, and then we'll see if that kind of pushes that cert out right away. But if you were deploying the cert via GPO because you're not on 1806 yet, you could just come into your trusted publisher store and go ahead and import a certificate, and then that could go out to all your clients at once. So now that we restarted that, we can see that code signing certificate we generated, that self-signed cert, has been automatically deployed to our client in the trusted publishers as well as the trusted root certificate store. So at this point, our client trusts everything. It has the setting to enable updates, so we could start installing the updates at this point. So I'll go ahead and close out of all these logs, and we can open up Software Center here. So here we go. We've got Java showing up. It looks like this machine actually doesn't have CCleaner. I think I meant to get FileZilla there, but that's okay. So what we've got going on here, we have Java 8 Update 161, the 32-bit version. So what I'll do, I'll go ahead and open up some browsers, and I'll also open up Control Panel. Now, since we enabled the option to automatically kill conflicting processes, what we'll notice here is that this is actually going to be closed. So if you're using maintenance windows and you feel comfortable closing processes to ensure that you have a clean upgrade, you could enable that option just in case users were to stay logged in and leave things open, after hours during that maintenance window time. We could ensure that we could kind of close that out for you. Now, one feature that my team is working on is giving you the ability to add custom pre and post update commands or scripts. So for example, if you wanted to have your own custom actions either before or after the update, we would give you the ability to basically browse out to a VB script, a batch file, or a PowerShell script to give you the ability to do any type of customizations if you needed to. Now, we certainly do test to make sure that everything upgrades clean, but if there was some type of setting or thing that you wanted to do, that's something we're hoping to get added soon. So if we go ahead and kick this off, this is going to just update just like any other Windows update or software update coming down through Config Manager. So we're going to go ahead and download it to our cache and then start the installation. So if we monitor the WUAU handler, this is where we actually see the update installing. Now, one thing that you just noticed is the browsers and that Java applet control panel process was automatically closed in the background because we enabled that option. So that looks good. So at this point, it's just kind of installing in the background. Shouldn't take but another minute or so here. Any questions while we're waiting for this install to kind of take place?
How many products have that
Yeah.
kill process?
Good question. So today it's going to be for applications that we know have problems if they're running. So we currently support that on, I want to say 5 or 6 different applications. So if I jump over to our publishing service, let's see what we have going on here. So I know Greenshot is one, so that one always kind of runs in the task tray and it doesn't gracefully close using their native installer. So I know that that's one of them. Oh, let's see. But yeah, I think it's about 5. So Greenshot will have that enabled. Java, Skype. Let's see. So all the Java updates, of course. So even the migration updates, we could have that feature. And there's a few other ones that we're aware of. A lot of updates actually work quite well. For example, Google Chrome, it does like a shadow copy, and it can actually update even while the user is using it. And then during the next Chrome start, it will actually do that replacement of the file. So a lot of updates handle that quite well. The way that we're initially doing that is for updates that we detected could have issues when it's running. Now, with the pre and post scripts that we're hoping to get added in the future, that will even give you more flexibility if you have any environmental things that you need to ensure you have in place for doing any custom actions as well. But today it's about 5 or 6 different products that we support the custom kill or skip action on. So at this point, we can see that we're upgraded. So we went from Java 8 Update 161 to 181. Now, obviously, we didn't publish the 64-bit version, so that's why we had no update for that. But at that point, we're pretty much done. So if we come back to our server, when the client reports back its compliance using state messages, that data would just flow into your compliance reporting. It looks like we've already got it. So you're just going to get all the status that you would expect to see with just like any other update. Now, what I'll do here is we'll jump over to a environment that has a bit more data. Oh, nope, that's the same site. We want to go to this guy. So if I open this one up, we've got about 10 different clients here, and we have our full catalog published. So this will kind of be a more realistic view of kind of what this could look like in your environment. So we really have the same type of setup here. So we're using an ADR to automatically publish any third-party updates. Now, what happened in this environment, I'll actually show you the way that this setup actually worked for us today. So if we jump back to where we had our email reports, since we had 13 different updates come out today, let's see. Oh, that's my client. That's not what I want. Let me come back over to the SCUP server. So jumping back over to our email. So this was a email that got sent in our production lab that we kind of use for testing. So these are all the new third-party updates that came out today. So all these updates were automatically published to our site in the background, and then we got this notification. So we can see that they came out, looks like the publishing tool ran about 4 p.m. Mountain Time. We can also see over here that it expired all the previous versions of these products as well. So when that automation happened in that lab, what also kicked off after the software update point synced is our Sccm ADR also kicked in and deployed all those new updates to the collections that they were targeting. So you could, of course, stage that out if you wanted to have like a staging group for testing. But this is why our compliance numbers are so low, because all of these updates were just published today. So we can see all the data about these updates. For example, we can see that it looks like the Slack client, the 64, we needed on 3 machines. But we've got all that same data here. So our update group, we can see we're almost not compliant except on 1 machine. So that looks good. If we kind of look at the reporting features we have, so since we sync everything over as a normal software update, you could use all the existing config manager reports that are native. But we also give you some dashboards, so I'll show you what that would look like. One thing that we're doing, even if you don't use our solution, we're actually going to make these dashboards available. If you're not following me on Twitter, that's where I'm going to announce it. It's either going to be tomorrow or probably sometime early next week. So if you want to get info about that, my handle is just @setupconfigmanager. So I'll be posting when these reports are available. It's going to be just a basic MSI installer, but what's nice about this, we'll automatically change all the URLs to match your environment. So even if you're not using our product today, we are going to make these available in the coming days, just free of cost for anybody. So kind of what we're showing you here is how many workstations you manage as well as how many servers. We're going to show you the compliance by workstations and servers by month. So for example, for the month of August, we can see that we have 279 instances of updates that are either required or installed. And out of all those instances, we're 79% compliant with that data. So if we were to break down in this month, we're going to sort by the number of updates that are needed on the most number of clients first. So we can see, for example, Dropbox, Evernote, Oracle, all these updates were updates that were released today. So that's why they're needed on 6 devices. If we were to break into one of these updates, this will actually take us into one of the native config manager reports where we could actually see what specific devices are showing that update as required, and then we could break into each of those devices. So going in from the dashboard, we'll also break out into some of the native reports to really get pretty detailed with what data you might need to know. Same type of data with servers, so we'll also give you the compliance number for servers. We also break out a few different graphs, so we'll give you the overall compliance of workstations by operating system. So we'll show you the count of how many operating systems you have. So Windows 7, Windows 10, and Windows 8. We can see we have 2 Windows 10 devices. None of those Windows 10 devices are compliant with all the updates we have deployed. So if we were to break into that group, we're going to see, hey, we have 2 Windows 10 machines. This one needs 10 updates, and this one needs 42 updates. So that's why they're showing there. We'll also give you the number of workstations that are missing a specific range of updates. So how many workstations are missing between 1 to 10, 11 through 25, 26 through 50, or greater than 50. And then you could break into each of those and say, you know, this number of machines are missing between 1 to 10. And that could just give you some data. Hey, why are these devices that are missing a large number? Are they not scanning? What's going on with those? We also break out compliance by month by operating system for workstations, so Windows 10, Windows 7, and Windows 8. So you can obviously see here we're pretty compliant for the past 5 months, but once we start getting into the current month, we don't have any of our OSs that are compliant with all those updates. So that's kind of the reporting piece of it. Of course, any of the native reports you could also run as well, so that looks good. I'll also show you the config manager portion of this. So if you wanted to use Sccm for publishing, I'll show you what that will look like in 1806. So we are compatible with the in-console publishing feature. Actually, I clicked the wrong device here. So SCUP. So the way that this would work is what we would do is we could come in here and add a custom catalog. So if we come in here and just copy our catalog URL, and I'll explain some of the differences between the end console versus our solution. But what we could do, we could go ahead and kind of publish patch my PC. Here we go, patch my PC, update catalog, and then paste that in here. And then we'll go ahead and add that catalog. So what's going to happen is when we subscribe, so after we add it, we'll go ahead and subscribe. So that's going to ensure that you trust our certificate. So it's going to download our catalog, and then we're going to have to verify that you trust our code signing certificate we use to sign the catalog. So all the updates within our catalog that go through Sccm do have to be digitally signed. So that looks good. So what's going to happen on the back end now that we have our catalog set up, there's going to be a new component that's going to automatically publish all the updates within our catalog, and they're going to publish with metadata only initially. So that's kind of one of the key differences. I'll kind of explain it once we start seeing these updates show up in our console. But what it's going to do, it's going to go out, download the catalog, verify all the certificates, and then it's going to publish all the data for all the updates from our catalog using metadata only. Now, since Sccm doesn't support a filtering feature in the console natively, what we've done on the back end to kind of ensure that you can filter if you don't want all our products, you can only import the products that you care about even in the Sccm console. So in order to do that, what we did on our engineering side is we've added a few additional parameters that you can append to your catalog URL. So if we look here, we can see that we have a different product parameter that you can append if you don't want all our updates to publish automatically. So this is what that would look like, for example, if you only wanted Java to come down. And then we just have a list of basically all the products that we support if you wanted to import just the products you want instead of getting everything. So totally up to you whether you want that or not. But we can see all these updates are kind of publishing with that metadata only option. So if we go ahead and open our WSync manager, so that's going to be the component that monitors the sync from Wsus. So I'm going to go ahead and initiate a software update point sync. And at this point, we're going to see all those third-party updates actually start flowing into our site. So we'll see what that looks like. There we go. So here's all the updates we can see kind of flowing in here. So this is going to sync all the active updates or non-expired updates that are in our catalog. So this is going to contain all those products since we didn't specify only a specific product. So if we come back into our console, obviously we're still getting some updates, so they're not going to all show up yet, but we should have a good number of these updates starting to show up. You can see we're at 104 updates right now, and that's still going to keep on growing here until that sync completes. So the key difference really between Config Manager and our publishing tool is that when the catalog syncs, and it's going to sync automatically every 7 days is the schedule in 1806, it's going to automatically pull in any new updates, but they're going to only publish with metadata only initially. Then what you would have to do if you actually wanted to deploy the update, so let me just see if I can find a small one here that I haven't published. Let's try Adobe Air. So that one's still metadata. Let me just see if the publish operation is complete. So it looks like that's now complete. So there would be one manual step that you would have to do if you did want to use the in-console publishing. So we would have to right-click those updates that auto-publish and choose this option to publish the content. So this is going to be when the update actually goes out and gets downloaded. So the same component that's handling the catalog sync is also going to handle the downloading of the update. So here we can see the Adobe update automatically got downloaded, and then it's going to sign the update with your certificate and then auto publish it. So with 1806, it's definitely an awesome feature. It certainly would save a lot of time compared to manually publishing your catalogs with SCUP. There is that one right-click option that you would have to do to actually download the content. So if we run one more synchronization, the Adobe Air update is going to now show with full content where it could be deployed. So really the key difference I would say between the 1806 publishing feature versus our publishing service is that we could initially publish the updates with full content, right? So when we publish them, they would actually be available to deploy automatically in your SCCM environment, and it would have the content there ready to download and deploy. Whereas if you want to use the native console publishing, you would have just one additional step that you would have to go through, and that would be that process of right-clicking those published updates and then choosing the publish content feature. So now we can see that it's published. You could then deploy this, and it could then be deployed, or you could use an ADR to auto deploy this. Now, we have talked to David James as well as a few other people in the product group. He's already said on Twitter they are looking at improving the downloading of content to make it more automatic. So we don't know if that's going to be like an option, maybe, when you come over to our catalog, to give an option, something in the properties to say something like automatically publish all the updates in this catalog with full content, or maybe it would be built into just the default downloader where it would automatically download the third-party one and then publish it and sign it. But we do know that's probably going to get improved at some point in the future, so you don't have to kind of do this right-click publish step. But that's the feature in 1806 where you can inject our catalog automatically. Here we can see it looks like it's all done though, so it looks like we have about 272 updates that are active, and that would be published if you went ahead and enabled everything in our catalog. Any questions about that? I think that's most of what I was just going
to say that's kind of why. So we're a customer of Patch My PC, full disclosure.
Okay, awesome. But what are you using today? Are you using SCUP, or have you kind of migrated over yet?
So this week I was using SCUP, and this week I switched over. I initially went with the in-console stuff,
okay,
and I probably should have read the docs a little closer because I didn't realize that it wouldn't publish with full content. So
gotcha.
That's kind of a deal breaker for me.
It's not really a. Have you switched over to the publishing service yet?
Yep. So I switched immediately to the publishing service.
Gotcha. Okay. Cool. Yeah.
I use ADRs exclusively for pushing patches. So
sure. Yeah.
If I could automate third party, that's amazing. So that's what I did, and it was very easy to do. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. So at the end of the day, it's really doing the same thing. Like we're using the same update metadata. I guess really the key difference between our service and the console is how's that publishing actually happening, and that's where at least compared to the 1806 release, we can do a few additional things like that. The full content's really the big one. The right-click actions for killing the process and skipping, they're also only available in the publishing tool at this time. What we might do in the future is give an additional parameter that we can use to set the options whether you want to kill it or not, so you could possibly use that feature even natively in the SCCM console. But that's really kind of the two key things that I can think of where our tool would kind of differ from what's available in the 1806 release. But yeah, any other questions that we have? I think I've kind of gone through really the full setup. I mean, we kind of went through everything that you would need to do to get this going. So it's quite simple. That's really one of the things that we wanted to make sure when we designed the publishing tool as well as really the catalog in general. We wanted to make sure that the setup is only what we need to do to make it as simple as we could.
You take application requests if there's an application we're running we want to pass?
Yes, that's one thing I did want to cover for sure. So if we have an application that we don't currently support, so for example, actually let me show you this. This is kind of cool. So we got a tweet about 2 hours ago. So you can request it wherever. You could email it. You could tweet us. You could come to our forum. The forum's kind of where we track it all. So regardless of where you request an app, whether it's email or our forum, we'll kind of post it over here on our forum to track it. But for example, this user, he went ahead and requested Adobe digital editions. So he requested this about 2.5 hours ago. So what we've actually done, we've gone through, we've tested it, and we've validated everything checks out, and it's going to be available in tomorrow's release. So as long as the application supports a silent command line, it installs under system context, and we have some type of logic that we can use to detect whether it's installed, so whether it places registry keys, as long as they have correct file versions that increment with each update. That's really what we're looking for, and as long as it has a public download path. So if it's hidden behind like an account portal, that might not be something we could add if they don't allow us to redistribute that binary. But yeah, I mean, you could Twitter, Facebook, the forum, email, wherever you want to post it. We always look into all those requests, and we're pretty quick at turning that around. But yeah, so in our requests, we can see we've had about 91 different products that we've added directly from customer feedback. So I mean, at this point, we're really not actively adding products at all. Any new requests are really going to come directly from the customers. We're not trying to just add a bunch of things just to add them to say we have a bunch of numbers for these apps. It's going to be based on what our customers request going forward, because to be honest, we've got a pretty good catalog base compared to others, and all of these are coming directly from our customers, so they're all providing value as well. But yeah, we're always open to adding new things, no additional cost. You would just tell us what you need, and as long as kind of all the prereqs check out, we'll get that back to you.
Kind of a harebrained idea for you. One problem I've always had with third-party patching is if it's something like Java that you need to push out on a new deployment, you kind of have to maintain it in two places. So
You do.
Yeah, it's nice to have the third-party patching stuff, but you still have to go in and create an application. Have you guys ever thought about doing some sort of auto import to
Yes.
create applications for these too?
Yeah, so we've got really, so that's probably at least at this point, we got that a lot at MMS. We've been getting that a lot lately. That's kind of, I think on the engineering side of things, we do want to get the pre and post script option added next. But that's kind of one of the next features that we do want to implement. There's some things that come into place in this type of scenario. So for example, if it would be extremely easy for us to add this using the existing software update model. For example, we could just have an option that says, hey, make updates installable generically or something like that. The issue with that scenario, so that would be something from our side we could implement in a matter of days probably. But at that point, we would be using software updates that would be required on a large number of devices. Even if they're not there, we could make that applicability. So that would do things like skewing reports, and if you didn't know how you were deploying it, you weren't aware of that, you could possibly deploy updates out to a lot of collections. So we're kind of thinking, could we somehow auto-inject information into the app model, or how we could kind of translate our packages into that. It is something that from our side we want to do. I'm not sure how long that might take, but having the ability to do that initial deployment, whether that's us automatically creating and importing applications for you, it's something that we're looking at, and that's kind of the next big thing that we would love to make available, because we know that's something that a lot of people would like to do. Instead of having to manage that base version to get it out there, having that auto-created and then automatically managed going forward, that would even provide kind of more value for that type of scenario.
Awesome. I'm glad it's on your radar, because that would be I don't know about everyone else in the room, but it'd be huge for me.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, we've already got a lot of the data, so we've got where the binary is downloading, we've got command lines, we've got the detection logic built into our applicability. It's just translating that to how could we use that metadata and auto-create apps for you, would really be kind of something that would be, quite awesome to have that capability, and would save, obviously, keeping it up to date obviously saves a ton of time, because you really only have to manage one base version, and then you could have a step to install updates. But even having that base one, we know would be super valuable for our customer base. Yeah, other questions? Pricing, I haven't really mentioned. Usually I usually forget about pricing. So we've got two different options. So we're either $1 a client. That's if you want to use SCUP. So most people don't want to use SCUP anymore, just because that manual step, right? So whenever we have a catalog update, which is usually 3 to 4 a week, you would basically have to go into SCUP, choose to import that updated catalog, and then go through and select all the new updates, and then choose to publish them and go through that wizard. Whereas the automation, that would allow you to either use our publishing service or you could use the SCCM console. So that's $2 a client a year. So I think we're quite affordable with the amount of value that we can kind of provide, not only from a security perspective, obviously that can be big, keeping things up to date, getting those vulnerabilities patched, but also from a time perspective. I think that's one of the key points that we can save as well. So as an admin, obviously you're going to save time. So what we do basically every day, we're checking the release notes page for those 150 products and pretty much analyzing if there's anything new that we need to add. So I think even from an SCCM admin perspective, it can be quite challenging to even know when new things come out, let alone being able to go and download the binaries, create the applications, determine the logic for requiring them, etc. So I think that's really kind of the key point there for the automation piece. It not only saves us publishing, but then going forward, you don't have to worry about really managing much as far as getting those patched and auto-updated. But I think that's pretty much all I had. We are doing 25% off for the first year for anybody in user groups. So if you're at MMS or any user groups that we're doing, including this, that first year we are doing 25% off. If you want a quote for that, you can just in the comment section say, hey, we were at the Fargo user group right here, and we want that 25% off the first year. So we are doing that option as well.
That is awesome.
Yeah, I think that's all I had. So what other questions do we have? I'd love to answer some more things that you guys might want to, want answered.
What's your best patching recommendation within SCCM? Just
Yeah,
something basic.
that is an awesome question, and I've got a solution for you. So if you're not following me on Twitter, so let me pull that up again. So my name is twitter.com/setupconfigmanager. Yes, that's me. So what I do, I have a bunch of guides. So if I jump over to my blog, what I've been doing, it looks like I started here in about May, but I'm posting a lot of different blog posts out. This is quite a bit. It's not specific to patching or what we do here at Patch My PC. For example, we've got a step-by-step guide for installing kind of best practices. But what I did is so this is actually a popular one as well. The deep dive into software updates. This was actually the most popular video that I did. So the way that I'm kind of handling the blog is it's really like a video blog. So if we actually jump over here, the post will give you a bunch of data, but we kind of walk through different things. So this deep dive, for instance, we go over things like client scanning, WMI, state messages, how the server processes update compliance. So this was kind of the deep dive into software updates, showing you how things actually work. But I've got a deployment, the video after that, or the blog post number 8, this is how to deploy software updates. So what I do in this video, like I'll go through, I'll kind of structure like how we can create ADRs, how we can stage that out to target multiple collections and stages. So basically through an ADR, you could still have automation, but you could still get all your testing done. So let me just try to find out where my actual groups are. So for example, in my structure, the way that we do it, I create an update group for each previous year, and then the current year, what I generally recommend is an update group for each month, so you get all your compliance reporting. Let me include this post if you're not. I'll include this in the Skype window. I think Scott's the only one there, but yeah, it's just setupconfigmanager.com. So I was actually a PFE. I'm not sure if anyone knows that. So I was a Premier Field Engineer for Microsoft supporting Config Manager a while ago. So the way that I'm kind of structuring these videos is just a lot of different topics that I would go on site with customers and talk about and implement. I'm basically just putting them in a video and showing what I would generally do in those type of scenarios. So there's a few cool things here. But yeah, that software updates kind of go through all the best practices that I would generally implement when I was setting up my update groups, my packages, pretty much kind of the full process of what I would generally do when I would go through and set up updates. Cool. Any other questions?
Position you play.
There it is.
I don't think I-
Oh, was that someone that had a question, or?
Yeah, he's wondering what position you play.
Oh, so I'm generally left wing, so I'm lining up for the 1Ts all the time. So that's me. I actually have a tournament this weekend for like a charity event thing, so we'll be doing a tournament over the weekend. But yeah, so I'm usually left wing. I don't have enough skill to play defense, but usually I can line up and get a pretty decent one-timer off.
We are in Fargo, so it's an
Yep, found the Canadian in the group here.
Awesome. Other questions? This was fun.
Looks like we're kind of a quiet group tonight.
All right, cool. Well, I just saw the tweet come out though, so that's cool. About let's see if we can pull that up. So it looks like this was your group today. Cool.
very meta right now.
All right, well, I mean, that's all I have. If you guys are all out of questions, just, if you have any questions, just support@patchmypc.net, or you can use our contact form or quote request if you're interested in getting pricing. But that's all I have.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for everything today. Providing the pizza, also schooling us on your product. I will say, again, as a caveat, as a customer, their support is awesome too. I've only had to use it like 2 or 3 times, but I get a response like right away, and it's always really good. So it's really kind of refreshing to have a vendor that you can actually talk to. So. Yeah, no, I was trying to say it nicely, but
It's really refreshing to have a vendor that doesn't suck.
That's a good tagline for saying it.
yeah, no, yeah, definitely check it out. Is anyone doing third party at FCCM here? Okay, a little bit. Only one other person. How the rest of you dealing with patching?
We just try to avoid them. Don't look
Just
at
try. Just pretend it's not there.
Yeah, it'll go away.
It's definitely one of the biggest things you can do for your security of your environment is getting all this stuff on lock, because there's a flash patch like once a month. There's Adobe patches, feels like every day. Just getting that under control, definitely worthwhile.
Justin, if you have any content that you want to pass along to Scott, we'll make sure that the entire group gets it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, I just pasted in the chat window. I'll make sure that all that stuff that you were putting in there gets out to everybody.
Okay, awesome. Let me. Okay, yeah, I'll include the supported products and some of the relevant links that I kind of went over here. Cool.
Cool.
Well, we do also have a trial. I don't know if that was, I don't think anyone asked that, but if you want to kind of set it up, that's totally free to go ahead and jump over, get a trial right here from the top. And, you can go download the publishing tool MSI, or you could use the trial directly in the console, depending on what you want to do. The trial is super easy to enable. So it's the same MSI that we would use when we actually set this up. There's just an option here that says use trial mode, and we'd go ahead and enable that. The only difference is with the trial mode, there is a subset of products that would be enabled. There's no limitation on the amount of length that you can use, so you can go ahead and get these updates published just to see kind of how this would work in your environment, make sure that the updates install, etc. And then if you wanted to switch out of trial mode, if you just come in here and uncheck that and paste in your subscription, then all the products would just light up where you could go ahead and enable everything.
Very cool.
So if there's a like a patch that's critical, I don't know how to better word it, like a meltdown equivalent for a third-party product, do you release them within 2 hours, or or is it just the next day?
Yeah, so the way updates generally work here is anything released before 10 a.m. Mountain Time, we're going to get out the same day in the same day's catalog release, which is usually between 2 to 3 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. If there's a critical update, we'll definitely evaluate that if it comes out later and try to get that out the same day as well. A lot of the critical updates for things like Java and some of the others, they now have like planned dates, so we can always kind of schedule around that. But it's not necessarily even critical updates. Really anything that comes out before about that time almost always makes it out the same day. The only time that we might skip a day is if we only have like maybe a single update that's not a critical update. Maybe it's just a small bug fix or small feature update. We might push that off if we only have 1 or 2 of those till the following day. But for the most part, we almost always get updates out the same day the vendor releases them, out in that day's catalog update. And Scott might be able to, I'm not sure if you're on the email newsletter yet, Scott, but I'm sure you can verify that they come out all the time. Now, of course, that doesn't mean you have to publish them every day. You can kind of come in here and determine how frequently you actually want to publish those new updates. But I think we're really on top compared to some of the others. I think that we're probably the best as far as turnaround time. But like I said, we're always kind of monitoring to try to make sure that we can keep that quick, because we know that that's a key point, especially when it comes to these security updates. Like today, for example, there were 4 different security vulnerabilities in these products. So we know that can be a key piece, the amount of time that we actually take to get that update out to you.
I'm assuming you have an onboarding process as well, right?
Yeah, so so the way the setup kind of works, it's actually along with kind of what we did. So that was really the whole process. We get this installed, make the cert. We have a step-by-step video guide, and then we also have a step-by-step PDF guide. So this will basically go through, hey, this is the MSI we download. These are the requirements. This is how we would enter in the URL, generate the cert. We even cover how you would deploy the certificate. So if you're using group policy, because you're not on 1806 yet, for example, we would go through, hey, this is how you would create the group policy template. This is how we would import the certificate into group policy. And then this is the third-party setting to allow third-party updates to install. That's really probably the most complicated thing, is if you don't have permissions to group policy and you're not on 1806, you would just have to go through maybe a change request with your domain guys to enable the 2 different settings here. But yeah, we do kind of have step-by-step. Of course, if you have an issue, that's where we could jump on a call and go through like a remote session to figure out what's going on. But for the most part, customers are actually, it's quite interesting how little we really have to go as far as support for the initial setup, just because we've really made it to be as simple as we could make it. So that process, I think, is actually pretty good.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's no smoke and mirrors to what he did. Like, that is literally how long it takes to do. It's very simple. So yeah, it takes no time at all.
I cannot be the only one with questions. Speak up, nerds.
Who are your top 2 competitors in this area?
Yeah, the Shavlik is kind of one of the others, which they've been bought 3 or 4 times now. I think they went to VMware, and maybe I think they're called Avanti now, so they do something similar. To
To be honest, we really don't pay a whole lot of attention to like how our design compares. We mainly just take feedback from customers. So for example, I want to say they have some type of plugin that shows an additional node where they can publish updates. Since we knew there was going to be publishing coming out soon within the console directly, we decided to go with the standalone service option. Because we did want to make some custom options available that we knew we just couldn't do with the config manager code base, since they can just publish what's in the catalog. You're not really going to get any type of flexibility with that. And then there's maybe Flexera. They're a bigger one. I think they're pretty pricey, but I know they have something similar. I would say they're probably the two different people in our space. Obviously, we're quite a bit smaller, so we very much have a startup mentality. I think that's why, even from Scott's perspective, there's 8 of us, so it's just a different culture. I would say we're always focused on how can we make the customer experience better. There's no, when you're this size, there's no internal things that you could distract you from that. So I think that's probably the biggest key difference, I would say, from us versus maybe some of the bigger competitors, is really the only focus we have is feedback we get from customers to implement those type of changes, as well as making our support is always kind of on point, that we get back quick and get things resolved. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, if you're just kind of looking for patching solutions for getting apps up to date, getting reports and compliance back, I think that we're competitive with every single vendor out there. There might be a few that offer maybe some fancy options, but I would say that's probably the 2 different ones that we would compete with the most.
I've got a question on the pricing model.
Sure.
So I'm a member of a larger SCCM environment. We have our sub-OU. Could our group just buy licenses for us, or is it how many clients?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. We're not really too particular with, if you have sub departments and you only want to deploy that within your department, that's fine. Same thing with like servers and workstations. If you only plan to manage workstations, we're fine with you only giving us that active count of workstations. We also don't care if you grow throughout the year. We're not going to try to say, hey, give us more money. Basically, if you decide to renew with us, you could just give us the updated count during that renewal cycle if you wanted to, increase those numbers if you did grow throughout the year.
All right. I think we're tapped out of questions here.
All right, awesome. Well, I just want to thank everybody for having us sponsor, listening to the group. Any questions, just feel free to reach out.
All right.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Justin.
Yep, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.